a judge sentenced that 70s show actor Danny Masterson to 30 years in prison to life yesterday, the maximum sentence that he could have possibly received for raping 2 women. Masterson's first trial for 3 counts of rape ended in a mistrial in December, but after prosecutors retried 2 of those counts, he was found guilty in May. Now, the 2 victims were at the courthouse for his sentencing, and they gave the following statement. So let's start with this first statement that says, "When you raped me, you stole from me," said one woman who Masterson was convicted of raping in 2003. "That's what rape is, a theft of the spirit. You are pathetic, disturbed, and completely violent," she said. "The world is better off with you in prison." And the statement from the other woman says, the other woman Masterson was found guilty of raping said he has not shown an ounce of remorse for the pain he caused. She told the judge, "I knew he belonged behind bars for the safety of all the women he came into contact with. I am so sorry and I'm so upset. I wish I'd reported him sooner to the police, although one of the victims did report him in 2004 and it didn't result in any investigation or any trial at the time. But thankfully, when it was reopened earlier in 2017, that now he is eventually being brought to justice. Now, Masterson has maintained his innocence, something that the judge highlighted as the judge handed down the sentence. The judge said this, "I know you're sitting here steadfast in your claims of innocence and thus no doubt feeling victimized by a justice system that has failed you," Olmida, who's the judge, told Masterson before handing down the sentence. "But Mr. Masterson, you are not the victim here. Your actions 20 years ago took away another person's voice and choice. One way or another, you will have to come to terms with your prior actions and their consequences." And he'll have plenty of time in prison to sit there and think about his actions and their consequences. Although without any remorse that he's feeling now, I don't know if he'll come to terms with the fact that he is where he's going to be for the next 30 years because of the actions that he did, and potentially longer than 30 years. Now, Masterson is a prominent member of the Church of Scientology. The church is also involved in this because they've been accused of covering up his crimes and having knowledge of his crimes. Now, all 3 of his victims were also members of the Church of Scientology. AP reported that at the sentencing hearing, one of the women who, like Masterson, was born into the church said she was shunned and ostracized for going to authorities in 2004. "I lost everything. I lost my religion. I lost my ability to contact anyone I'd known or loved my entire life," she said. "I didn't exist outside the Scientology world. I had to start my life all over at 29. It seemed the world I knew didn't want me to live." And a lot of people, when they think of Scientology, one of the people they think of is Leah Remini, who was actually at the trial. She's a prominent anti-Scientologist activist after escaping Scientology. She put a statement out to her Twitter, which reads in part, "Over the past 7 decades, former Scientologists have sadly become used to Scientology using its financial resources, religious protection, and relationships to snatch justice away from them. For over 2 decades, Danny Masterson avoided accountability for his crimes. While Danny was the only one sentenced, his conviction and sentence are indictments against Scientology, its operatives, and its criminal leader, David Miscavige." And Maz, a lot of people were surprised after the first trial ended in a mistrial and the involvement to which Scientology has had in this case and in the trial and in their defense of Danny Masterson, that he was found guilty and now that he has been sentenced the maximum sentence. And a lot of people are saying it feels like a shift in the culture, because so often these crimes are committed by these prominent members of the Church of Scientology and they just get away with it. So it's a continuation of the Me Too movement, but also in the movement against Scientology, it feels like a big victory.
Yeah, I mean, this is just tragic any way you look at it from top to bottom. I mean, first of all, the victims. I mean, like she said, you don't just get over the trauma. It's not like, oh, now that he's been convicted, oh great, all is good, let me move on with my life. The trauma lives on with you the rest of your life. And it's just tragic that this happened. It's tragic that we all knew Danny Masterson as this fun guy from the show, and that it's tragic that this person that you thought was one thing is completely different. And then, as you said, with the Church of Scientology and all these organizations, I mean, it reminds me of the Catholic Church with all the issues of the priests. It seems like all these institutions try to defend themselves as opposed to self-investigating and getting rid of those who commit crimes. And so, yes, I hope that it's a shift in the culture. I'm not holding my breath because I know that quite often these organizations have a lot of money. They're very wealthy. They're not going to admit their guilt. They're not going to admit that they are adding to this culture. But I do hope that as generations move forward, I mean, it's a slow progress, but I hope as generations move forward, we continue to call these things out and earlier, and believe the victims when they say something. I have a daughter, I would hope that, God forbid, if she ever told me anything happened to her, I would want to start by believing her first and then investigating, because here we are, these poor victims. She said she tried to say something early on and everyone turned against her, which is just, I mean, that's, from this side, it seems so obvious that you should definitely have investigated and believed her back then. But knowing that this organization like Church of Scientology or other organizations like the Catholic Church are so insulated and they're so protective, I can see how those people that are in there would have said, no, don't rock the boat. We'll figure it out. We'll slap his hand. And here we are with lives ruined years later. So I hope it's a shift in the culture.
Right, especially with organizations like Scientology that have the financial resources to just demonize, and the media connections to demonize, the victims in these cases who are trying to come forward, who are trying to speak out. It's the same way that we see them react to people who leave the Church of Scientology and then speak out against the practices of Scientology and the unfair labor practices, the abuse, the sexual abuse, the violence against women. They spend all of this money and all these resources trying to smear them in the media. And I mean, it took 20 years for these women to finally get, any sort of justice out of the situation. And I just hope that, that amount of time continues to shrink and people are able to get justice sooner and sooner.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.